5 years ago, I set out on the most epic adventure of my life, riding a bike to the South Pole. This is my story.
Last week, just as I accepted that I was going to fail, the surface conditions improved, and finally I was able to start getting the distances needed to be successful. December 14th started out as a cloudy day, but there was still enough contrast to be able to see where I was going to follow the resupply route. The resupply route was a little bit more packed than if you got off the route, and so in order to be able to stay riding on my bike, I needed to stay on that route that had been used by others. As the day went on, the whiteout became worse, and it got to the point where I couldn't see well enough to stay on the route as I was biking. If I'd get off the route and into soft snow, I'd sink in too far and I wouldn't be able to keep going. So in order to keep going, I'd have to get off my bike, walk around, find where that trail was, and the only way I could tell where the trail was by feeling it with my feet. So I'd walk around, feel it with my feet, and when I could feel that surface being a little bit harder, I could move my bike back up onto that. So sometimes I have to wander around quite a bit looking to try to figure out did I go off to the left, did I go off to the right. Sometimes it was quite a ways off, and I'd pull my bike back over onto that route and then ride a little bit longer. It was doing that over and over, and it just wasn't working, so I had to get off my bike and start pushing it. After doing this for a couple hours, I decided that I'd set up for lunch and see if I waited a little while, the whiteout would improve a little bit to where I could see where I was going and I could continue on.
Stopped for lunch. Light snow falling. I don't know if you can see the snow falling in the picture. But pretty much whiteout conditions. Can't tell where I'm going real well. I guess not windy whiteout, so it could be worse. Everything's kind of a flat white, so there's the trail I'm trying to follow, and I imagine that looks just like a flat white, which is about what it looks like. The contrast is pretty low, so it's hard to tell where I'm going. Hard to see the bumps in the snow. Yeah, it's hard to see the bumps in the snow, so it's hard to keep from tripping over things or falling off of things or smacking into things as you're biking, and so all in all, it's kind of a easy to get mixed up. I kind of got confused which direction I was going there for a minute, but yeah, there's how tall you can see is nothing. Just kind of wait and see if this will get a GPS fix.
One of the things that was helping me stay on the track was there was ski tracks left behind by Juan, and I was following those tracks, and they were helping me stay on the track, and he eventually wandered. I could no longer see well enough to be able to stay on the path. There was actually a couple times as I was going along, I'd be going along, and then I'd look down at my compass, and I'm looking, and it's like, oh man, I am going completely the opposite direction. It was surprising how fast I could be just completely turned around and going the wrong direction. In order to progress, I had to pretty much stare at my compass the whole time, because you can't see anything there, no landmarks, nothing that you can see to try to keep you going in a straight line.
Off that direction somewhere in the white abyss is the South Pole. I think it may have GPS location. So here I am. About to set up my tent so I can eat lunch.
Around 6 o'clock that day, the sun just started to break a little bit through the clouds, and maybe it was just the angle the sun got right to where I could start to see again. I could see just well enough to make out the route, and then it started improving, and so I was able to finish out the day riding, which made it so the day that looked like it was going to be a bad day and I wasn't going to get enough miles to be successful, I turned around the day and was able to get another good solid day that worked for being able to make it to the South Pole. December 15th was a really bad day. The whiteout conditions got worse. I just couldn't see where I was going. I made about 5 miles. One of the things I struggled with before I went on my expedition was what I would do on Sundays. I believed that Sunday should be a day of rest. In order to make it to South Pole, I needed to make every day count. Originally, I had decided that I was going to take Sundays as easy as I could to continue moving further south at an easy pace. But it turned out that there was no such thing as an easy pace in Antarctica.
Well, today's been pretty bad. This is the best visibility I've had all day, and it isn't good. I can't see any contrast in the snow, so I can't see where I'm supposed to be going. Can't find points ahead of me to try to navigate. So I sit looking at my compass a lot. Makes it really hard to travel. Just end up falling into the deep snow all the time. Can't find the hard snow to bike on, and so I just have had a bad day. I think I didn't even get 7 miles, little more than 6 miles today. I can't continue on though. I've been going about 12 hours, but a lot of that time I spent sitting around hoping I could see something, that things would improve and I'd be able to see where I am. But where's my camp? But overall, things have just been bad. It's hard to see. You can't make out where you're going. You can't. You step into deep snow or fall into deep snow, trip over the snow drifts, everyth's soft. It's actually kind of warm. It's been snowing for the last 3 days on and off, and so there's a bit of fresh snow, which then on top of the fact that the low lighting condition and stuff makes that even harder to tell where you're going. And so I'm quitting a little bit early today, but I've had enough. Get some rest, and hope tomorrow I'll be able to see a little bit better.
With biking, there's a minimum speed you have to go or the bike will tip over. The effort that it took to go fast enough to keep from tipping over was so difficult. Anybody that has done an all-day endurance event knows that you have to go at a pace that you can maintain all day long. With Antarctica, there's another aspect that gets added into that, is that you can't work so hard that you get yourself soaked in sweat. Because if you do, then that sweat can freeze and then it kills you. I was putting forth an effort that was more than what should have been sustainable throughout a day, and was also one that was getting me drenched in sweat. I'd open up my coat and all I had underneath was a base layer. I was still getting drenched in sweat, and the wind blowing against my chest, I'd get scared that I was going to get frostbite on my chest, and so I'd have to zip up a little bit to try to protect my chest from the wind, but I was getting drenched in sweat. So that basically meant that in order to survive the day, I had to keep my effort up at an effort that was just should not have been sustainable, but I had no choice but to keep that going all day long in order to keep from freezing. On Sundays, I had originally planned that I was going to take it a little easier and try to make it as much of a rest day as I could, but it turned out that just wasn't possible. The first Sunday I quit early. I only went for a few hours before I quit because the wind was just too strong, and I literally getting off my bike and putting my chest up against the handlebars and pushing with everything I had, I could not overcome the strength of the wind. I couldn't move forward. And then on the second Sunday, it was the really bad whiteout. It just became too frustrating and difficult to try to keep moving forward, and so again I decided to quit. The day started out really bad. With all the new snow and the wind blowing, the resupply route had pretty much been buried in all the fresh snowdrifts to where I couldn't find it. As I was looking up forward, there's a pretty good hill I had to climb. Going up the hill was really soft, but when I got to the top of that hill, then the sun is hitting the snow at a better angle, and it would ice up the snow and make it easier to travel. Then all of a sudden, I got to where I could ride for miles without getting off my bike, which before it was like I'd ride for a little ways, I'd hit a soft snowdrift and I'd get stuck in it and have to push my bike out, and I was only going a few hundred feet at a time. But now I was able to get miles at a time, and I started making really good progress. The conditions actually kept getting better and better the further south I was going. I was able to even make it up hills that previously I would have had to have pushed. I was able to make it up those. I remember going up this hill, and it's just a little bit of sastrugi in it, and just trying to make it up and over this sastrugi. Most of the expedition I had gone just in silence. I hadn't been listening to anything on my iPod or anything, but this day I'd taken and put my headphones in, and I was listening to music, and as I was climbing this really difficult hill, the song that was playing was Du Hast, and it's kind of a strong, angry song, and I found that really good as I'm just trying to push and just overcome those, get up over top of the sastrugi, and I was able to, using that and using the harder snow and the improved conditions, I was able to get up over those hills, and I was able to continue on going and climb hills that previously would have been impossible. And so I ended up the day getting 20 miles that day, which kind of helped make up for the poor mileage the day before. December 17th, the winds had picked back up. It was a really strong, hard, windy day, and my legs were just feeling super weak from going every day and the workload that I've been going, and so it turned out to be mostly a day of pushing my bike. I did get a little bit of riding in, but the majority of the day was hike a bike, but I still was able to get 15 miles in. I've got no control of these holes in my soul. Won't let go. I know why.
Okay, so my first cache is out there. I'm gonna go retrieve it. This is a big deal for me, being able to finally, kind of close to the camera, I guess. Okay, so my cache I'm at my cache, and so I'm gonna go retrieve it. It's a big deal for me. It means I'm a quarter of the way there, and it means that I've got a new supply of fuel, which I was running low on fuel, but it also means I have a new supply of food. I still had food, not enough to finish, but still had quite a bit of food, and so the extra food is going to add extra weight, and so it'll be a challenge to see how fast I can go after I add the extra weight. When I get to the next cache after this one, I can leave stuff that I don't want to take with me the rest of the way there, and I'll get rid of a bunch of stuff that's kind of heavy, and then that way I'll be a lot better shape for the last half. Looking forward to this. Let's go out and see what the cache looks like. Grab my shovel. Need my shovel here to be able to dig the cache out. Get out. December 18th. My cache is about 10 miles away. I stopped to melt more water and am going to go until I get to the cache. December 18th evening. It started out windy today. I worked hard and biked and pushed uphill. I realized that if I got 5 miles in today, that tomorrow I would run into the cache at 5 miles into the ride and have to break up my day, and I decided it would be better to do that at the end of the day. So instead of doing 15 miles today, I decided that I would do 20 miles. So I decided to stop after 10 miles, melt new water, eat, and then go until I got to the cache, and maybe I would do a shorter day tomorrow. It took me 7 hours to get the first 10 miles, but then while I was taking my lunch break, the wind stopped, and the snowdrifts turned hard, and add to that, I started to go downhill. This was the only time during the whole expedition that I actually used any gear other than the lowest gear on my bike. So I kicked it up a gear or two. I cranked out the last 10 miles in 4 hours. I was drenched in sweat by the time I was done, but very happy. Now we'll have to see how I travel with all the new weight. I decided to leave the breaking into my cache igloo until the morning so I can get video. The camera was complaining about the battery not being compatible, but I think the problem was just that the camera was too cold. I don't know what the temperature is, but it is a lot colder than it was when it was cloudy. December 19th. I retrieved my cache. It was a lot harder to dig out than expected. Now I get the joy of trying to get everything to fit in my sleds and dragging more weight. I started late this morning. I spent the first part of the morning organizing the new stuff into the sleds. The sleds are now a lot heavier. I will eat as much as I can as quickly as possible and always add mix to the drink so I can get rid of that extra weight. And today it made for a very hard day. I didn't have a lot of energy. I spent a lot yesterday, but there were still a lot of good rideable sections. I need to get rest and start early tomorrow and get what I can in while the weather is good. They say fog will be coming the next few days. Oh joy. More days of not being able to see where I'm going.
December 20th, I saw my first penguin. Well, it wasn't really a penguin. It's just as I was climbing this hill, I look off to the right, and it was just kind of like on the right edge of the route I was doing. I could see this clunk of snow sticking out that kind of looked like a penguin, and so I took a picture. It's actually, I used it as a landmark to navigate by for quite a while as I was going up, and so I got a little picture of this penguin that I saw on the side of the trail. Next week, I suffer my first mechanical breakdown, spend Christmas Day by myself out in the middle of Antarctica. Oh, and I make it to the halfway point.